Rain streaked the narrow glass of my window, distorting the shapes of the streetlights into trembling halos. Beyond the glow, the city's buildings loomed like dark, watchful sentinels, their brick faces wet and gleaming under the storm. Somewhere in that labyrinth of apartments and tenements, lives pressed together in too close proximity, there were stories, whispered, denied, sometimes buried. Stories about the people who live next door, the kind you laugh off in daylight but replay in your head when the lights are out and the air feels heavier. They say you never really know your neighbors, and the truth is, you probably don't want to. Behind those walls, behind those thin doors you pass without thought, strangers keep secrets that hum in the quiet and bleed into the hallways. Some are harmless. Others, they have teeth. It starts small. A sound too late at night. A shadow where there shouldn't be one. A smell creeping under your door that makes your stomach turn before you even know why. You tell yourself it's nothing, that apartment life is just like that. Noise, smells, quirks. But then the patterns emerge, and patterns are dangerous things. Patterns mean intention. Patterns mean someone is aware of you, watching you. These are not urban legends. They're not exaggerated campfire tales. They are real accounts from real people, each one living just a wall away from something they could neither explain nor escape. 6 neighbors, 6 stories, each a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling horror doesn't come from the wilderness or the supernatural. It comes from the person whose door is less than 10 feet from your own. Tonight, I'll tell you their stories. You might not believe them now, but you will hear their footsteps in your dreams. You'll feel their presence in the corners of your own home. And maybe, just maybe, you'll think twice the next time you hear a knock after dark. Because after these 6 stories, you'll understand. Sometimes the scariest monsters live right next door. I had been living in the building for barely 3 weeks when I first saw him. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind where the city outside seemed to fold in on itself. Low clouds pressing the skyline, street lamps casting sickly cones of light through the mist. I was locking my door when I noticed movement at the far end of the hallway. Apartment 3B's door, always shut and silent, was cracked open just enough for a pale eye to stare through the gap. It didn't blink. It didn't move. I stood frozen, keys in my hand, and after a long, uncomfortable beat, the door closed, slowly, without sound. The landlord had mentioned 3B in passing during my lease signing, describing the tenant as quiet, keeps to himself. No name, no details, just the kind of vagueness that sounds harmless until you start to think about it too much. I told myself I'd imagined the whole thing. People glance at their neighbors. It doesn't mean anything. But later that night, as I lay in bed, I heard it. A faint shuffling in the hallway, followed by a slow drag across my door like fingertips grazing the wood. The next morning, I noticed something strange. My doormat had been flipped over. Not shifted or crumpled, but flipped perfectly, the fibers pressed flat as if someone had smoothed them down with care. Days passed. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Alvarez from 3A in the laundry room. She leaned close, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You've seen him, haven't you? The man in 3B." I nodded reluctantly. She glanced toward the door, checking if anyone was listening. "Don't talk to him. Don't answer if he knocks. He likes to collect things." When I asked what she meant, she only shook her head and left, laundry basket clutched tight to her chest. That night I was woken by a sound so soft I almost missed it. My doorknob turning, stopping just before the latch clicked. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stayed still, barely breathing, listening to the faint scrape of metal on metal. Then silence. In the morning, I found a small object on my doormat. A button. Old, black, and worn smooth at the edges. It wasn't mine. I left it on the counter, meaning to throw it away, but forgot. 2 nights later, another appeared. A brass key, tarnished and bent, its teeth worn down to nothing. I didn't hear anyone leave them. They were just there. The third time, It was a photograph, black and white, curled at the edges, showing a child standing in front of a brick wall. The child's face was blurred as if the camera had caught them mid-movement or mid-scream. By now, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I left for work, I felt eyes on me from behind 3B's door. Once I thought I heard faint breathing through the peephole as I passed. I decided to confront him. My hands shook as I knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again, louder. After a pause, the door opened an inch, and a sliver of his face appeared. Pale skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, lips thin and unmoving. His eyes, flat and dark, locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice that was barely more than a breath, he said, "You have something of mine." Before I could respond, the door shut. When I went back to my apartment, the photograph was gone from my counter. In its place on the kitchen table was a new object. My own house key, the one I'd been carrying on my keychain. I never felt it leave my pocket. That night I slept with the lights on. I didn't hear the doorknob turn or the shuffling outside, but in the morning my doormat was gone. In its place was a single note, written in jagged, uneven letters. "Back soon." And 3B's door, it was standing wide open. When I moved into the top floor of the old duplex, the landlord told me the only other tenant was a quiet older lady upstairs. Her name was never given, and her curtains were always drawn, thick and heavy, even during the brightest afternoons. I thought nothing of it. Quiet neighbors are a blessing. But 3 days after settling in, I began to notice details. It started with a knock on my door just after sunset. When I opened it, no one was there. Instead, on the welcome mat sat a steaming mug of tea. The scent was sharp and herbal, not the kind you find in grocery stores. I hadn't met her yet, so I assumed it was a neighborly gesture and brought it inside. That night, as I sipped it, I heard faint footsteps above, slow, deliberate, circling directly over my living room. The next morning, there was another gift outside my door, a folded piece of paper with my full name written in looping cursive. Inside was a note, "You should get more sleep, last night wasn't enough." I stared at the words, chilled by the implication. My bedroom blinds had been shut, my door locked. How could she possibly know? Over the following week, the gifts kept coming. A loaf of bread with the note, "Careful, the crust is sharp." A little wooden charm carved into the shape of an eye, "To watch over you." A single glove, "For the hand you hurt." And yes, my right hand had a small bruise from moving furniture, something I'd told no one. One evening, I decided to return the favor. I knocked on her door, balancing a plate of cookies in one hand. The moment my knuckles touched the wood, the footsteps above my apartment stopped. I waited, listening. The air was still. Then, from inside, I heard the slow creak of someone approaching. The door didn't open. Instead, a voice, soft and gravelly, spoke through the wood. "Don't bring me anything you made, I already know how it tastes." I set the plate down and stepped back, but the door never opened. Later that night, I woke to the sound of my upstairs window being slid open. My heart pounded as I realized I shouldn't be able to hear it. The floor plan didn't match. Her upstairs bedroom wasn't directly above mine. Still, the sound was there. The long, slow drag of a window frame followed by the faint shuffle of something being lowered by rope. In the morning, I found a single white feather on my pillow. No note this time, just the feather, perfectly centered. That was the first night I slept with the lights on. It didn't help, because when I woke at 3:14 a.m., the lights were off, the room cold. And somewhere in the darkness, directly above me, I heard her voice whisper, "Your breathing is slower now." It was the fourth night in my new apartment when I first saw him. The building was silent, the kind of deep silence that only exists after midnight, when even the pipes seem to sleep. I'd woken up thirsty and padded barefoot toward the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed the door, I glanced through the peephole out of habit. The hallway light flickered once, and there he was. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still in the center of the corridor, his head slightly tilted toward my door. He wasn't close enough to knock, but his presence pressed against the air like an invisible weight. He didn't move, didn't sway, didn't even seem to breathe. I stepped back, my pulse loud in my ears. When I looked again, he was gone. The next night, at exactly 3 a.m., I woke without reason. I tried to ignore it, but the same pull drew me to the peephole. He was there again, in the exact same spot, his posture unchanged. It became a pattern. Every night, at exactly 3 a.m., he would appear in the hallway. Sometimes he faced my door, sometimes the door opposite mine. Once he stood with his back to me, head bowed as if studying the carpet. No one else in the building seemed to notice. Or maybe they did and simply refused to speak about it. One morning I decided to ask the super about him. The old man frowned. "You've been here a month, right? There's no one else on your floor. Those 2 other units are vacant." That night I sat in the dark with my eye to the peephole, waiting. At 3 a.m. sharp, the hallway light flickered, and this time he was much closer. So close I could see the pale curve of his cheek, the sharp angle of his jaw. He leaned forward, pressing one ear to my door, listening. I backed away, heart pounding. From the other side, I heard a slow inhale, then a whisper that made my stomach clench. "It's almost time." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day I stuffed a towel under the door and left the TV on for noise. Still, when 3 a.m. came, I woke. No alarm, no sound, just that same pull. I couldn't resist. I checked the peephole. This time his face was directly against it. I stumbled back in shock. A soft tap-tap followed, like fingernails against the glass. Then so faint I thought it was inside my own head, I heard, "Tomorrow night I'll be inside." The first note appeared 3 days after I moved into the building. It was a small square of paper tucked neatly under my door, the handwriting precise and slanted. "Welcome. You forgot to lock your balcony door last night." I froze. My balcony door was in the back of the apartment, invisible from the hallway. The blinds had been closed. I told myself it was some kind of neighborly warning, maybe from someone in an apartment with a view into mine. But when I checked the layout, 2F was the only unit in line with my balcony, and its curtains were always shut tight. 2 nights later, another note appeared. "You should avoid using your left hand to stir your coffee. It's weaker." That morning, I had burned my left hand on the kettle. No one had seen it happen. The notes kept coming, each more unsettling. "Don't sleep on your stomach tonight. That bruise on your shoulder is turning purple now. Your mother called you at 9:47 p.m., but you didn't answer." Every detail was correct. I tried to catch whoever was leaving them. I stayed up late, listening for footsteps in the hall, but the notes always appeared when I wasn't looking, sometimes when I was sure I hadn't left the apartment. One night, after a particularly long day, I found a new note under my door. My stomach dropped as I read it. "Stop trying to see me. You won't." I decided to confront 2F directly. I knocked, but no one answered. The door looked unused, paint chipped, a fine layer of dust on the doormat. I pressed my ear to it. Silence. That night, I set up my phone to record the hallway, aiming it at my door. The next morning, I played the footage back. At 3:18 a.m., the screen went black for exactly 7 seconds. When the picture returned, there was a fresh note lying on the floor. "Now you know I can turn out the lights whenever I want." The handwriting was shakier this time, but at the bottom in smaller letters was something new. My own name, written in a style that perfectly matched my own handwriting. The final note came 2 days later. I found it not under the door, but on my pillow. It read, "From here I can see you reading this.